Captain Sarah Chen stood at attention in the briefing room, her shoulders squared despite the snickers echoing from the back rows. The announcement had just been made. She would be the first female pilot selected for the classified stealth fighter program. Around her, 23 male pilots exchanged glances and whispered comments that weren't meant to be quiet. She can barely handle a regular F-16 and now they want her flying invisible jets? Muttered Lieutenant Jake Morrison, loud enough for half the room to hear. A few others nodded in agreement, their faces showing the same skeptical expression that had followed Sarah throughout her military career. Colonel Hayes, the program director, cleared his throat sharply. The room fell silent, but the tension remained thick as morning fog. Sarah had seen this look before, the same doubt that greeted her when she first entered flight school, when she graduated top of her class, and when she earned her wings. Each time she had proven them wrong through dedication and skill that spoke louder than their whispers. Sarah's journey to this moment began in a small farming town in Iowa, where she spent her childhood watching military jets streak across endless blue skies. Her father worked at the local grain elevator and her mother taught elementary school. Neither had any connection to aviation, but Sarah's fascination with flight grew stronger each year. She would lie in the wheat fields behind their house, tracking the vapor trails of passing aircraft and dreaming of the day she would pilot one herself. At 17, she walked into the Air Force recruitment office in Des Moines, determined to become a fighter pilot. The recruiter, a weathered sergeant with kind eyes, looked at her carefully before explaining the challenges she would face. Women had only recently been allowed in combat roles, and the path would be difficult. Sarah listened politely, then signed her enlistment papers without hesitation. Flight school proved everything the recruiter had warned about and more. Sarah was one of only 3 women in her class of 42 cadets. The physical demands were brutal, high-G training that left her dizzy and nauseous, emergency procedures practiced until they became second nature, and endless hours studying aerodynamics and weapon systems. While some classmates went out on weekends, Sarah spent her free time in the simulator, perfecting maneuvers and memorizing aircraft specifications. The psychological pressure was equally challenging. Instructors questioned whether she had the mental toughness for combat flying. Fellow cadets excluded her from study groups and social gatherings. Some openly stated that women didn't belong in fighter cockpits. Sarah absorbed these comments like armor absorbs bullets, acknowledging the impact but refusing to let them penetrate her determination. Her breakthrough came during a particularly difficult training exercise. The scenario involved air-to-air combat simulation, with cadets paired against experienced instructor pilots. Most students were shot down within minutes. Sarah, however, used an unconventional approach that caught her opponent off guard. Instead of engaging in traditional dogfighting maneuvers, she used the aircraft's stealth capabilities and electronic warfare systems to remain hidden while positioning for the perfect shot. Her instructor, a veteran pilot with 15 years of experience, found himself eliminated before he even knew Sarah was there. Word of her performance spread quickly through the base. Suddenly, the same instructors who had questioned her abilities were studying her tactics. Fellow cadets who had dismissed her began asking for advice. Sarah had found her unique strength, not just flying skill, but an intuitive understanding of stealth technology and electronic warfare that surpassed most pilots with years more experience. Upon graduation, Sarah was assigned to the 34th Fighter Squadron, flying F-16 Fighting Falcons. Her reputation preceded her, and she faced the familiar mixture of skepticism and curiosity from her new squadron mates. The F-16 was a different beast from the training aircraft, more powerful, more complex, and capable of carrying a deadly array of weapons. Sarah approached it with the same methodical dedication that had carried her through flight school. Her squadron commander, Major Rodriguez, was a fair man who judged pilots by their performance rather than their gender. He gave Sarah the same opportunities as every other pilot, including participation in red flag exercises, the Air Force's premier combat training program. During her first red flag deployment, Sarah again demonstrated her exceptional ability to use stealth and electronic warfare tactics that made her nearly invisible to enemy radar systems. The mission that changed everything took place over the Nevada desert during a massive training exercise. Sarah was assigned as wingman to Captain Davis, a pilot with 8 years of experience and a reputation for aggressive flying. Their objective was to penetrate heavily defended airspace and eliminate high-value targets. Intelligence reports indicated they would face multiple surface-to-air missile sites and at least a dozen enemy aircraft. As they approached the target area, Captain Davis's F-16 suffered a critical systems failure that forced him to abort the mission. Sarah was left alone, facing impossible odds, one pilot against an entire enemy defense network. Standard procedure dictated that she should also abort and return to base. Instead, Sarah made a decision that would define her career. She continued the mission alone, using every stealth technique she had mastered to slip through the enemy defenses undetected. What happened next became legend within the Air Force community. Using advanced electronic countermeasures and flying at altitudes that pushed her aircraft to its limits, Sarah not only completed her assigned mission, but eliminated several additional targets of opportunity. Enemy controllers never knew she was there until their defensive positions began exploding around them. When the exercise ended, opposing forces commanders demanded to know how many stealth aircraft had participated in the attack. The answer shocked everyone: just one F-16, flown by the pilot many had dismissed as unsuitable for combat operations. Colonel Hayes had been observing that exercise from the command center. He watched Sarah's performance with growing amazement, tracking her movements on radar screens that barely registered her presence. Her ability to maximize the F-16's limited stealth characteristics while employing electronic warfare tactics was unlike anything he had seen. When the classified stealth fighter program needed a pilot with exactly those skills, Sarah's name was at the top of his list. Now, standing in that briefing room surrounded by skeptical faces, Sarah felt the familiar surge of determination that had carried her through every challenge. She knew that whispers and doubts would follow her into this new program, just as they had throughout her career. But she also knew something her critics didn't: that underestimating her capabilities was their biggest mistake. The stealth fighter program would provide her with technology that matched her unique talents perfectly. Soon, the same pilots who questioned her abilities would witness demonstrations of aerial combat skill that would redefine their understanding of what was possible in modern warfare. The classified hangar felt like stepping into another world. Sarah followed Colonel Hayes through multiple security checkpoints, each more sophisticated than the last. Retinal scanners, fingerprint readers, and armed guards verified their identities before massive steel doors slid open to reveal the most advanced fighter aircraft she had ever seen. The sleek, angular shape seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, giving the machine an almost supernatural appearance. "Meet the F-22 Raptor," Colonel Hayes said, his voice carrying a mixture of pride and reverence. Fifth-generation air superiority fighter with stealth capabilities that make it virtually invisible to enemy radar. Only a handful of pilots worldwide are cleared to fly this aircraft, and even fewer have mastered its full potential. Sarah walked slowly around the aircraft, studying every curve and angle. Unlike the conventional fighters she was accustomed to, the Raptor's design prioritized stealth over traditional aesthetics. Its surfaces were covered in special materials that scattered radar waves, and its weapons bay was internal to maintain its low radar signature. Everything about this machine was built for one purpose: dominating aerial combat while remaining undetected. The weeks that followed tested Sarah's skills and knowledge like never before. The Raptor's systems were infinitely more complex than anything she had encountered. The aircraft's computer processed thousands of data points every second, integrating information from multiple sensors to create a comprehensive picture of the battlefield. Learning to interpret and act on this information while flying at supersonic speeds required mental agility that pushed even experienced pilots to their limits. Captain Morrison and several other pilots from the original briefing had also been selected for the program. Their initial skepticism toward Sarah had evolved into grudging respect during ground school, as she consistently outperformed them on technical examinations and system operations. However, doubts remained about her ability to handle the Raptor in actual combat scenarios. The aircraft's stealth capabilities were both its greatest strength and most demanding challenge. Flying stealthily required constant attention to altitude, speed, and positioning. Any mistake could compromise the aircraft's radar signature and expose it to enemy detection. Sarah discovered that her intuitive understanding of stealth principles, developed during years of maximizing her F-16's limited capabilities, translated perfectly to the Raptor's advanced systems. Her instructor, Lieutenant Colonel Williams, was a veteran test pilot with thousands of hours in experimental aircraft. He had trained dozens of pilots on the Raptor program, and he approached each student with professional skepticism earned through years of witnessing the gap between classroom theory and aerial reality. Sarah, however, surprised him from their very first training flight. Most pilots take months to develop the spatial awareness needed for stealth operations, Williams explained during a post-flight briefing. You're tracking multiple radar threats while maintaining optimal positioning for maximum stealth effectiveness. It's like watching someone who was born for this aircraft. The training program intensified as Sarah progressed through increasingly complex scenarios. She learned to operate the Raptor's advanced radar system, which could detect and track multiple targets at ranges exceeding 100 miles. The aircraft's missile systems were equally sophisticated, capable of engaging several enemies simultaneously while maintaining stealth throughout the engagement. Most impressively, the Raptor could share targeting information with other aircraft and ground forces through secure data links, creating a networked warfare capability that revolutionized air combat tactics. Sarah's fellow trainees began seeking her advice on stealth techniques and electronic warfare procedures. The same pilots who had questioned her selection for the program now recognized her expertise in areas where they struggled. Captain Morrison, who had been most vocal in his initial criticism, approached her after a particularly challenging simulation. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I let assumptions cloud my judgment about your abilities. Your performance in these training exercises has been exceptional. I was wrong to doubt you." Sarah accepted his apology gracefully, understanding that changing deeply held beliefs required time and evidence. She had encountered similar attitudes throughout her career and had learned that actions spoke more convincingly than words. Her focus remained on mastering every aspect of the Raptor's capabilities, knowing that real-world missions would demand perfection. The international situation was deteriorating rapidly during Sarah's training period. Intelligence reports indicated that a hostile nation was massing forces near Allied territories, with sophisticated air defense networks protecting their military buildup. Traditional fighter aircraft would face severe challenges penetrating these defenses, but the Raptor's stealth capabilities offered unique opportunities for gathering intelligence and disrupting enemy operations. Colonel Hayes briefed the trainees on the evolving situation during their final weeks of training. Satellite imagery showed enemy airfields with advanced fighter aircraft and surface-to-air missile systems. Electronic intelligence suggested that enemy forces possessed radar systems specifically designed to detect stealth aircraft, though their effectiveness against the Raptor remained uncertain. "This is why we developed this program," Hayes explained. "Conventional air power may not be sufficient for the challenges we're facing. The Raptor's unique capabilities make it our most valuable asset for operations in heavily defended airspace." Sarah absorbed every detail of the intelligence briefings, studying enemy aircraft specifications and defensive capabilities. Her analytical mind processed the tactical challenges, identifying weaknesses in enemy formations and opportunities for exploitation. She began developing engagement strategies that maximized the Raptor's stealth advantages, while minimizing exposure to enemy countermeasures. The final training exercise took place over a simulated battlefield that replicated the expected operational environment. Multiple radar-guided surface-to-air missiles, advanced fighter aircraft, and electronic warfare systems created a defensive network that would challenge even the most skilled pilots. Sarah's mission was to penetrate this network, eliminate high-value targets, and return to base without detection. As she approached the exercise area, Sarah felt the familiar calm that preceded combat operations. The Raptor's cockpit displays showed multiple radar contacts, but the aircraft's stealth coating kept her invisible to enemy sensors. She selected her first target, an enemy command and control facility defended by 2 surface-to-air missile sites. Using techniques she had perfected during countless training flights, Sarah maneuvered the Raptor through gaps in enemy radar coverage. Her movements were precise and calculated, never staying in one position long enough for enemy systems to establish a lock. The aircraft's internal weapons bay opened silently, releasing precision-guided missiles that destroyed their targets before enemy defenders knew they were under attack. The exercise continued for 2 hours, with Sarah eliminating target after target while remaining completely undetected. Enemy controllers grew increasingly frustrated as their defensive positions disappeared without any indication of attacking aircraft. When the exercise ended, opposing forces commanders were stunned to learn that a single pilot had neutralized their entire defensive network. Colonel Hayes and Lieutenant Colonel Williams watched Sarah's performance from the exercise control center, tracking her movements on displays that showed her tactical decisions in real time. Her approach to stealth combat was unlike anything in their training manuals. Intuitive, creative, and devastatingly effective. "She's not just flying the aircraft," Williams observed. "She's thinking like the aircraft. It's as if she understands stealth technology at a level that goes beyond technical training." As Sarah taxied the Raptor back to its classified hangar, she knew that her training was complete. The doubts and skepticism that had followed her throughout her career were now replaced by recognition of her unique abilities. More importantly, she had found her true calling, mastering the most advanced fighter aircraft ever built and preparing for missions that would test every skill she had developed. The real challenge was about to begin. The secure briefing room was packed with military officials from multiple branches of service. Maps covered every wall, showing enemy positions and defensive installations across hundreds of miles of hostile territory. Sarah sat among 12 other Raptor pilots, all studying the mission parameters that would test their training in the most demanding way possible. General Martinez, the overall mission commander, stood before a large display screen showing satellite imagery of the target area. Enemy forces had positioned themselves strategically, using natural terrain features and sophisticated camouflage to hide their true strength. Intelligence estimates suggested they possessed over 200 military aircraft, including advanced fighters that rivaled American capabilities. "Operation Silent Thunder will be the largest stealth combat mission ever attempted," General Martinez explained. "Our objective is to neutralize enemy air power before they can threaten our allied partners. Conventional bombing would face overwhelming defensive fire, but stealth fighters can eliminate key targets without triggering their air defense network." Sarah studied the mission assignments carefully. Each Raptor pilot would operate independently, striking different target sets across the enemy's defensive network. Her assigned targets included 3 airfields containing approximately 40 enemy fighters, plus the radar installations and missile sites protecting them. The challenge was enormous. She would be facing more enemy aircraft than any pilot had ever engaged in a single mission. The intelligence officer, Colonel Park, provided detailed information about enemy capabilities. Their fighters were newer models equipped with advanced radar systems and long-range missiles. Their pilots had trained extensively in air-to-air combat and were considered highly skilled opponents. Most concerning, enemy forces had positioned electronic warfare aircraft throughout their defensive network, specifically designed to detect and track stealth fighters. "Make no mistake," Colonel Park warned. "This enemy has studied our stealth technology and developed countermeasures. They know we're coming and have prepared accordingly. Your survival depends on maintaining perfect stealth discipline and avoiding detection at all costs." Sarah absorbed every detail of the briefing, visualizing her flight path and engagement sequences. She would approach her target area at extremely low altitude, using terrain features to mask her approach. Once in position, she would need to eliminate multiple targets quickly and efficiently before enemy forces could react. The margin for error was essentially 0. The mission launched before dawn from a classified base in friendly territory. 13. Raptors departed at carefully timed intervals, each following different routes toward their assigned target areas. Sarah's flight path took her over mountainous terrain that would help conceal her approach but also limited her options if enemy forces detected her presence. Flying at night in hostile territory required every skill Sarah had developed throughout her career. The Raptor's advanced sensors painted a detailed picture of the landscape below, but she knew that enemy radar operators were scanning for any anomaly that might indicate an approaching stealth aircraft. Her flight profile had to be perfect, low enough to avoid detection but high enough to maintain tactical flexibility. 2 hours into the mission, Sarah reached the edge of enemy airspace. Her radar warning receiver began detecting multiple enemy radar systems, their electronic beams sweeping the sky in search patterns designed to catch stealth aircraft. Sarah adjusted her altitude and heading constantly, threading through gaps in radar coverage with precision that left no room for mistakes. The first target area contained an enemy airfield with 12 fighter aircraft and supporting facilities. Intelligence reports indicated that enemy pilots maintained constant readiness, capable of launching within minutes if their base came under attack. Sarah would need to eliminate their aircraft on the ground before they could become airborne threats. She approached the airfield from an unexpected direction, using a valley system that provided natural concealment from enemy radar sites. The Raptor's targeting systems identified individual aircraft in their protective shelters, calculating precise impact points for maximum destruction. Sarah selected her weapons carefully, guided bombs that would eliminate multiple targets while minimizing her exposure time over the target area. The attack happened with surgical precision. Sarah's weapons bay opened for less than 30 seconds, releasing precision-guided munitions that struck their targets with devastating accuracy. 12 enemy fighters disappeared in massive explosions that lit up the night sky. Secondary explosions from fuel and ammunition storage areas added to the destruction, effectively eliminating the airfield's operational capability. But Sarah's mission was far from over. Her radar screens showed enemy activity increasing across the region as air defense networks responded to the attack on the first airfield. Surface-to-air missile sites activated their targeting radars, and enemy fighters began launching from bases throughout the area. The element of surprise was gone, and Sarah now faced a fully alerted enemy defense network. She turned toward her second target, another airfield located 50 miles deeper in enemy territory. This approach would be more challenging, as enemy forces now knew stealth aircraft were operating in the area. Electronic warfare aircraft had taken off and were scanning for any trace of her presence. Fighter patrols were establishing defensive positions along likely approach routes. Sarah's training took over as she navigated through this gauntlet of enemy defenses. She used every technique she had mastered, flying at altitudes that minimized her radar signature, adjusting her speed to avoid detection by specific radar systems, and employing electronic countermeasures that confused enemy sensors. The Raptor's stealth capabilities were being tested to their absolute limits. The second airfield held 16 enemy fighters, including several advanced models that posed significant threats to Allied forces. Sarah's approach required flying directly through a radar-defended corridor, where surface-to-air missiles could engage her if detected. She timed her penetration perfectly, passing through the defensive zone during a brief gap in radar coverage. Her attack on the second airfield was even more precise than the first. 16 enemy aircraft were destroyed in a coordinated strike that lasted less than 2 minutes. Sarah was already turning away from the target area before enemy defenders realized they were under attack, but her radar warning receiver was now detecting multiple threats. Enemy fighters were converging on her general location, and surface-to-air missile sites were preparing to engage. The third and final target was the most challenging of all. This airfield contained the enemy's most advanced fighters, 18 aircraft capable of matching the Raptor's performance in air-to-air combat. More importantly, it was defended by the enemy's most sophisticated air defense network, including radar systems specifically designed to detect stealth aircraft. As Sarah approached the final target area, her tactical situation became critical. Enemy fighters were actively searching for her, using coordinated patrol patterns that covered all possible approach routes. Electronic warfare aircraft were jamming communications and attempting to disrupt her aircraft's systems. Multiple missile sites had activated their targeting radars and were prepared to engage any aircraft they detected. Sarah made a decision that went against conventional wisdom. Instead of approaching at low altitude to avoid radar detection, she climbed to high altitude where her stealth characteristics would be most effective against the enemy's detection systems. This was a calculated risk. If detected, she would face immediate attack from multiple directions. But it also positioned her perfectly for the final phase of her mission. From high altitude, Sarah's targeting systems could identify every enemy aircraft on the ground. Her weapon loadout included advanced missiles specifically designed for this type of target. She programmed each weapon with precise coordinates, ensuring that every enemy fighter would be eliminated in a single devastating attack. The final attack was Sarah's masterpiece of precision warfare. 18 missiles launched simultaneously from her internal weapons bay, each programmed to strike a different target. The enemy never saw them coming. Their radar systems were focused on lower altitudes, expecting traditional attack profiles. By the time the first explosions lit up the airfield, all 18 enemy fighters had been destroyed. Sarah turned for home, knowing that she had accomplished something extraordinary. In a single mission, she had eliminated 46 enemy aircraft without being detected once. But her tactical displays showed that the most dangerous part of the mission was just beginning. Enemy forces throughout the region were now fully activated, and her route home would take her through the heart of their defensive network. Enemy radio communications filled the airwaves with urgent reports and coordination attempts. Sarah's headset crackled with intercepted transmissions as enemy commanders tried to understand what had happened to their air assets. 3 major airfields had been destroyed without any radar contact or visual sighting of attacking aircraft. Enemy forces were experiencing something completely outside their training and doctrine. Sarah's route home would take her through the most heavily defended corridor in enemy territory. Multiple surface-to-air missile battalions had repositioned themselves along likely escape routes. Fighter aircraft from undamaged bases had scrambled to establish patrol lines designed to catch any retreating stealth aircraft. Electronic warfare. Units were broadcasting jamming signals across all frequencies, attempting to disrupt navigation and communication systems. The Raptor's advanced sensors detected these threats long before they could detect her. Sarah's tactical display showed a complex web of enemy positions, their coverage areas overlapping to create an almost impenetrable defensive network. Traditional escape routes were completely blocked. She would need to find another way home, using methods that enemy planners had never considered. Instead of following predetermined egress routes, Sarah decided to exploit a fundamental weakness in enemy planning. Their defensive positions were designed to intercept aircraft flying away from the target areas. They had not anticipated that a stealth fighter might penetrate deeper into their territory before turning toward friendly airspace. Sarah adjusted, her heading to take her directly over the enemy's most heavily defended installations. This decision seemed suicidal from a conventional perspective. Sarah would be flying over enemy headquarters facilities, major airfields still containing operational aircraft, and the highest concentration of air defense systems in the entire region. But her understanding of stealth warfare told her that this unexpected approach would actually provide the safest path home. Enemy defenders would never expect an attacking aircraft to voluntarily enter their most protected airspace. As she flew deeper into enemy territory, Sarah's passive sensors detected increasing levels of electronic activity. Enemy commanders were coordinating massive search operations, deploying every available aircraft and radar system to find the mysterious attackers. Multiple fighter patrols were converging on areas where they believed stealth aircraft might be hiding. Surface-to-air missile crews were reporting ready status on dozens of defensive positions. Sarah's route took her directly over the enemy's primary military command center, a heavily fortified complex surrounded by multiple layers of air defenses. Her radar warning receiver showed numerous threats, but none of them detected her presence as she passed overhead. The Raptor's stealth design was performing exactly as intended, rendering her invisible to enemy sensors despite flying through the heart of their defensive network. 30 minutes into her return journey, Sarah encountered her first serious challenge. An enemy electronic warfare aircraft had positioned itself along her flight path, broadcasting powerful jamming signals designed to disrupt stealth aircraft systems. The jamming was sophisticated and targeted, suggesting that enemy forces had developed specific countermeasures against Raptor technology. Sarah's training included procedures for operating in heavy electronic warfare environments. She activated the Raptor's advanced countermeasures, systems that could adapt to enemy jamming in real time. The aircraft's computers analyzed the enemy signals and automatically adjusted her own electronic systems to maintain full functionality. Within minutes, she had neutralized the enemy's jamming attempts while remaining completely undetected. But the electronic warfare encounter had alerted enemy forces to her general location. Multiple fighter aircraft began converging on the area, flying search patterns designed to force any stealth aircraft into detection range of ground-based radar systems. Sarah found herself in the middle of an aerial dragnet with enemy fighters, approaching from multiple directions. Her tactical situation required split-second decision-making. Sarah could attempt to avoid the enemy fighters by changing course, but this would take her over additional air defense positions and prolong her exposure to enemy detection systems. Alternatively, she could maintain her current heading and trust in the Raptor's stealth capabilities to keep her hidden from the approaching threats. Sarah chose the more aggressive option. She maintained course and speed, flying directly through the enemy fighter formation. Her passive sensors tracked 4 enemy aircraft as they passed within miles of her position, their pilots completely unaware that they were sharing airspace with an American stealth fighter. The Raptor's design was so effective that enemy pilots were literally looking for something that was invisible to their sensors. This encounter demonstrated the psychological advantage of stealth warfare. Enemy forces were hunting for aircraft they could neither see nor track, creating uncertainty and confusion that degraded their overall effectiveness. Multiple fighter patrols were pursuing false radar contacts, while surface-to-air missile crews were reporting phantom targets that disappeared before they could engage. Sarah was witnessing the breakdown of enemy air defenses from the inside. As she approached the border between enemy and friendly territory, Sarah detected a new threat that would test her skills in an entirely different way. Intelligence had failed to identify a recently deployed surface-to-air missile system positioned directly along her intended flight path. This system used advanced radar technology specifically designed to detect stealth aircraft, and it was actively scanning the area where Sarah would need to pass. The missile system represented enemy technological advancement that narrowed the Raptor's stealth advantage. Sarah's radar warning receiver indicated that the system was capable of tracking low observable aircraft under certain conditions. She would need to time her passage perfectly, flying through a brief gap in radar coverage that lasted only seconds. Sarah studied the enemy radar pattern carefully, identifying the precise moment when she could safely pass through the missile systems engagement zone. The window of opportunity was incredibly narrow, less than 30 seconds when the radar system would be unable to detect her presence. Missing this timing would result in immediate missile engagement from a system designed specifically to defeat stealth aircraft. She adjusted her speed and altitude to arrive at the critical point exactly when the radar gap occurred. The Raptor's flight management systems calculated her approach with mathematical precision, ensuring that she would be invisible during her most vulnerable moment. Sarah's hands remained steady on the controls as she flew directly toward a missile system capable of destroying her aircraft. The passage through the missile defense zone lasted 28 seconds. Sarah's radar warning receiver remained silent as she passed through the most dangerous air defense system she had ever encountered. Enemy operators never knew how close they had come to detecting and engaging an American stealth fighter flying directly through their defensive coverage. Beyond the missile system lay friendly airspace and safety. But Sarah's mission was not complete until she had successfully returned to base with intelligence about enemy capabilities and confirmation of target destruction. Her aircraft's sensors had recorded detailed information about enemy radar systems, electronic warfare capabilities, and defensive tactics that would prove invaluable for future operations. As she crossed into friendly territory, Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. She had accomplished something unprecedented in aviation history, penetrating the most sophisticated air defense network ever deployed and destroying 46 enemy aircraft without being detected once. More importantly, she had demonstrated that stealth technology, when employed by a skilled pilot, could revolutionize air warfare. Her radio crackled with communications from friendly air traffic controllers, confirming her safe return to controlled airspace. Sarah responded with standard check-in procedures, but she knew that her mission report would describe events that would change military aviation forever. The skeptics who had doubted her abilities would soon learn that she had achieved something no other pilot had ever accomplished. Ground control directed her toward the classified base where Colonel Hayes and the mission commanders were waiting for her debriefing. Sarah's fuel reserves were sufficient for a normal landing, despite the extended mission duration and complex routing required to evade enemy defenses. The Raptor had performed flawlessly throughout the entire operation, proving that American stealth technology maintained its decisive advantage over enemy countermeasures. The classified hangar buzzed with activity as intelligence analysts downloaded data from Sarah's aircraft systems. Every radar contact, electronic signature, and tactical maneuver had been recorded in meticulous detail. Colonel Hayes stood beside the Raptor, watching as technicians extracted information that would reshape their understanding of enemy capabilities and stealth warfare tactics. Sarah emerged from her post-flight medical examination to find a room full of senior officers waiting. For her debriefing, General Martinez was present, along with representatives from the Pentagon and intelligence agencies. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation. Preliminary reports suggested that Sarah had achieved something extraordinary, but the full scope of her mission's success was still being analyzed. Captain Chen, General Martinez began, initial satellite imagery confirms destruction of all assigned targets. 46 enemy aircraft eliminated without any indication that you were detected by enemy forces. Please walk us through your tactical decisions and explain how you achieved these results. Sarah stood before the assembled officers, the same calm confidence that had carried her through the mission now serving her during this critical debriefing. She began with her approach to the first target area, explaining how she had used terrain, masking, and precise timing to avoid enemy radar detection. The intelligence officers took detailed notes as she described enemy defensive capabilities and weaknesses she had observed. The enemy's radar network was sophisticated but predictable, Sarah explained. Their operators followed standard search patterns that created gaps in coverage. By studying these patterns during my approach, I could time my movements to remain invisible throughout the penetration phase. Her explanation of the second target engagement drew particular attention from the assembled officers. Flying through an alerted air defense network while maintaining stealth required tactical skills that went far beyond standard pilot training. Sarah described her decision-making process, explaining how she had analyzed multiple threat streams simultaneously while maintaining perfect flight discipline. Colonel Park, the intelligence officer, interrupted with a crucial question. Our preliminary analysis suggests that you flew directly over several enemy installations that should have been able to detect stealth aircraft. How did you maintain invisibility through these high-threat areas? Sarah's answer revealed the depth of her understanding of stealth warfare principles. She explained how she had used the enemy's expectations against them, flying profiles that contradicted conventional attack patterns. By approaching targets from unexpected directions and varying her altitude constantly, she had exploited weaknesses in enemy defensive planning that their training had never addressed. The most remarkable aspect of her mission became clear as intelligence analysts presented their findings. Not only had Sarah eliminated all assigned targets, but she had also gathered comprehensive intelligence about enemy capabilities. Her aircraft's sensors had mapped their entire air defense network, identified the locations of mobile missile systems, and recorded electronic signatures from their most advanced radar systems. This intelligence is worth more than the tactical success of the mission, General Martinez observed. Captain Chen's penetration of enemy airspace has given us a complete picture of their defensive capabilities. This information will be critical for planning future operations, but the debriefing revealed an even more significant achievement. Analysis of enemy radio communications intercepted during the mission showed the psychological impact of Sarah's attacks. Enemy forces had experienced complete confusion and panic as their aircraft were destroyed by an invisible attacker. Multiple fighter squadrons had been scrambled to search for threats that they could neither detect nor engage. The enemy's entire air defense doctrine assumes that they can track and engage attacking aircraft, Colonel Hayes noted. Captain Chen's mission has demonstrated that stealth technology can achieve complete air superiority without the enemy even knowing they're under attack. This changes everything about how we approach air warfare. Sarah's tactical innovations during the mission had implications beyond her specific targets. Her techniques for avoiding electronic warfare jamming, penetrating coordinated fighter patrols, and timing passage through radar coverage gaps would become standard procedures for future stealth operations. She had essentially written a new manual for stealth combat tactics during a single mission. The intelligence analysis also revealed the broader strategic impact of Operation Silent Thunder. Enemy forces had lost nearly 20% of their total air power in a single night, without inflicting any damage on attacking forces. Their remaining aircraft were now grounded at bases that could be equally vulnerable to future stealth attacks. The balance of air power in the region had shifted dramatically in favor of Allied forces. As the debriefing concluded, General Martinez addressed the room with obvious satisfaction. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have just witnessed a demonstration of American technological superiority and pilot skill that will be studied for decades. Captain Chen has proven that our stealth technology, when employed by the right pilot, can achieve results that our enemies thought were impossible." The reaction among Sarah's fellow Raptor pilots was immediate and unanimous. The same officers who had initially questioned her selection for the stealth program now recognized her as the most skilled stealth warfare pilot in the Air Force. Captain Morrison, who had been most vocal in his early skepticism, approached her after the debriefing with genuine admiration. "I need to apologize again," Morrison said quietly. "Not just for doubting your abilities, but for failing to recognize that you had skills the rest of us were still developing. What you accomplished tonight will change how we think about air combat. I hope you'll share your techniques with the rest of the squadron." Sarah's response reflected the humility and professionalism that had defined her throughout her career. She explained that her success had been built on the foundation of training and support provided by instructors like Lieutenant Colonel Williams and the technical expertise of the entire stealth program team. Her individual achievements were inseparable from the collective effort that had made the stealth program possible. News of Sarah's mission success spread quickly through the military aviation community. Though the classified nature of stealth operations meant that specific details remained restricted. Fighter pilots throughout the Air Force began hearing rumors of an unprecedented single-pilot mission that had eliminated dozens of enemy aircraft without detection. The story took on almost mythical qualities as it passed from base to base. Within the Pentagon, Sarah's mission report became required reading for senior planners developing future air campaign strategies. Her demonstration that stealth aircraft could achieve complete tactical surprise against sophisticated air defenses opened new possibilities for military operations. Traditional concepts of air superiority, which relied on overwhelming enemy forces through numerical advantage, were being replaced by precision stealth tactics that could neutralize threats without conventional engagement. The international implications of Sarah's success extended far beyond immediate military considerations. Intelligence agencies from allied nations requested briefings on American stealth capabilities, seeking to understand how such devastating results had been achieved without enemy detection. The mission had demonstrated a level of technological and tactical superiority that would influence defense planning for years to come. Enemy forces, meanwhile, were struggling to comprehend what had happened to their air assets. Their investigation into the attacks revealed no radar tracks, no visual sightings, and no electronic signatures that could explain the destruction of 46 aircraft across 3 separate airfields. The psychological impact was enormous. Their pilots began questioning whether their own aircraft and defensive systems could protect them against an invisible enemy. Sarah found herself at the center of classified briefings with defense contractors and aircraft designers who wanted to understand how she had maximized the Raptor's capabilities. Her insights into stealth tactics and electronic warfare techniques would influence the design of future aircraft and defensive systems. The military-industrial complex was eager to learn from her experience and incorporate her innovations into next-generation technology. Lieutenant Colonel Williams, her primary instructor, observed the transformation in how other pilots approached stealth warfare training. Sarah's techniques were being studied and practiced by every pilot in the program. Her mission had provided a real-world demonstration of tactics that had previously existed only in theory, giving instructors concrete examples of how stealth capabilities should be employed in combat situations. The success of Operation Silent Thunder also validated the entire stealth aircraft development program. Critics who had questioned the enormous cost and complexity of stealth technology could no longer argue against its effectiveness. Sarah's mission provided definitive proof that stealth fighters could achieve military objectives that would be impossible for conventional aircraft, justifying the investment in advanced aviation technology. As weeks passed, intelligence reports confirmed the lasting impact of Sarah's mission on enemy capabilities. Their remaining aircraft were being relocated to bases far from potential combat zones, effectively removing them from strategic consideration. Surface-to-air missile crews were reporting decreased morale and effectiveness, knowing that their systems had failed to detect attacking aircraft. The enemy's entire air warfare doctrine was being questioned and revised in response to the stealth threat. Sarah's role in the stealth program evolved from student to instructor as her tactical innovations became standard doctrine. She began training other pilots in the techniques she had developed, sharing the intuitive understanding of stealth warfare that had made her mission possible. Her classroom sessions were attended by the most experienced pilots in the Air Force, all eager to learn from her unprecedented combat experience. The recognition of Sarah's achievements extended to the highest levels of military leadership. She received commendations from the Secretary of Defense and personal recognition from the President for her contribution to national security. But perhaps more meaningful to Sarah was the respect she had earned from her fellow pilots, who now recognized her as the leading expert in stealth air combat tactics. Colonel Hayes, who had selected Sarah for the stealth program despite initial skepticism from others, reflected on the decision during a private conversation. "I knew you had potential when I reviewed your training records," he told her. "But what you accomplished during Operation Silent Thunder exceeded even my most optimistic expectations. You didn't just complete a mission, you revolutionized how we think about air warfare." 2 years after Operation Silent Thunder, Sarah stood before a new class of stealth pilot trainees in the same briefing room where she had once faced skeptical colleagues. The atmosphere was completely different now. These young pilots looked at her with admiration and respect that came from understanding what she had accomplished. Her reputation had transformed her from an outsider fighting for acceptance into the most respected instructor in the stealth warfare program. The international situation had stabilized significantly since her historic mission. Enemy forces had never recovered from the psychological and tactical impact of losing nearly 50 aircraft to an invisible attacker. Their air force had been reorganized around defensive strategies that assumed American stealth fighters could penetrate any airspace at will. The balance of power in the region had shifted permanently in favor of Allied forces. Sarah's teaching methods reflected her deep understanding of both the technical and psychological aspects of stealth warfare. She emphasized that successful stealth operations required more than advanced technology. They demanded a mindset that embraced innovation and adaptation. Her students learned to think like their aircraft, understanding how every decision affected their radar signature and tactical position. "Stealth is not just about being invisible," Sarah explained to her current class. "It's about understanding your enemy's expectations and consistently doing something different. The moment you become predictable, you lose your greatest advantage." Her classroom included pilots from allied nations who had traveled to the United States specifically to learn from her experience. The International Stealth Pilot Exchange Program had become one of the most selective training opportunities in military aviation. Sarah's techniques were being adopted by air forces around the world, spreading American tactical innovations through the alliance structure. The technology had also evolved significantly since Sarah's breakthrough mission. New stealth aircraft incorporated lessons learned from her combat experience, with improved sensors and electronic warfare systems that built upon her tactical innovations. Sarah worked closely with aircraft designers, ensuring that future generations of stealth fighters would be even more effective in the hands of skilled pilots. Captain Morrison, who had initially been her harshest critic, now served as her deputy instructor in the stealth warfare program. Their professional relationship had evolved into mutual respect and collaboration, with Morrison often telling new students about his early misconceptions regarding Sarah's abilities. His transformation from skeptic to supporter became a powerful lesson about the importance of judging people by their performance rather than their background. "I learned more from being wrong about Captain Chen than from most of my correct assumptions," Morrison would tell students. She taught me that excellence can come from unexpected sources, and that our job as military professionals is to recognize and develop talent wherever we find it. The tactical manuals Sarah had written based on her combat experience became required reading at military academies and flight schools throughout the Allied nations. Her insights into stealth warfare had been translated into multiple languages and studied by defense analysts worldwide. The principles she had discovered during that single mission were now being applied to everything from individual aircraft tactics to strategic campaign planning. Sarah's personal life had also stabilized during this period. She had married a fellow Air Force officer who understood the demands of military service and supported her career advancement. Their relationship provided the personal foundation that allowed Sarah to continue pushing the boundaries of what was possible in military aviation while maintaining the balance necessary for long-term success. Her influence extended beyond the military community into the civilian aerospace industry. Defense contractors regularly consulted with Sarah on new aircraft designs and tactical systems. Her practical experience with stealth technology and combat conditions provided insights that could not be obtained through simulation or testing alone. Several major innovations in stealth aircraft design could be traced directly to recommendations she had made based on her operational experience. The younger pilots in Sarah's current training class represented a new generation that had grown up knowing that stealth warfare was possible. Unlike Sarah's own generation, which had to prove that stealth tactics could work in real combat, these pilots were learning techniques that had already been validated in the most demanding operational environment. They approached their training with confidence based on Sarah's demonstrated success. Lieutenant Amanda Foster, one of Sarah's most promising students, embodied this new generation of stealth pilots. Foster had joined the Air Force specifically because she wanted to follow Sarah's example and become a stealth warfare specialist. During training exercises, she displayed the same intuitive understanding of stealth principles that had made Sarah exceptional. "You remind me of myself when I was starting in this program," Sarah told Foster after a particularly impressive training flight. "But you have advantages I never had. Proven tactics, refined technology, and institutional support for what we're trying to accomplish. The question is what new innovations you'll develop to push stealth warfare even further." The stealth program had expanded dramatically since Sarah's breakthrough mission. Multiple squadrons now operated advanced stealth fighters, and the tactics she had pioneered were being applied to bomber aircraft and unmanned systems. Her influence could be seen in every aspect of modern air warfare, from individual pilot training to strategic doctrine development. International recognition of Sarah's achievements had also grown over time. She had been invited to speak at defense conferences around the world, sharing her insights with military leaders and aerospace professionals. Her presentations were attended by thousands of people eager to understand how she had revolutionized air combat tactics through individual skill and innovation. The enemy forces that had once threatened regional stability had never recovered from the demonstration of American stealth capabilities. Their military doctrine had been fundamentally altered by the realization that their air defenses could be penetrated at will by skilled stealth pilots. The psychological impact of Sarah's mission continued to influence their strategic planning years after the actual attacks. As Sarah looked at her current class of trainees, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from a skeptical briefing room to her current position as the world's leading expert on stealth warfare. The doubts and challenges she had faced throughout her career had ultimately strengthened her resolve and sharpened her skills. Every obstacle had become a stepping stone toward greater achievement. The young pilots before her represented the future of air warfare, men and women who would carry stealth tactics into new domains and develop innovations that Sarah could only imagine. Her role had evolved from pioneering new techniques to nurturing the next generation of pilots who would build upon her foundation. "Remember," Sarah told her students as they prepared for their final training exercise, "you are not just learning to fly stealth aircraft. You are preparing to redefine what is possible in air combat. The techniques we teach you today are just the beginning. Your mission is to discover what comes next."